It's 3:07 a.m. The house is quiet. Your body is exhausted. And yet, you're walking to the bathroom again. That frustration builds night after night, and you start wondering if this is just part of getting older. Stay with me, because in a moment I'll explain why it's often not just age, and later you'll see how one simple shift in how you drink water during the day can completely change your nights. Before we go further, now here's what most people don't realize. Waking up to urinate at night, often called nocturia, is less about how much you drink and more about when and how your body processes fluid. According to institutions like the NIH and Mayo Clinic, nighttime urination becomes more common with age due to changes in hormones, bladder capacity, sleep cycles, and circulation. But common does not mean untouchable. Your body runs on rhythms. During the day, when you're upright and moving, your kidneys filter fluid efficiently. At night, a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, often discussed in medical literature and referenced by resources like Cleveland Clinic and PubMed, helps slow urine production so you can sleep. As we age, that nighttime signal can weaken. In a moment, I'll explain how your daily hydration habits influence that hormone, and later you'll see why drinking less water can actually make the problem worse. Think of your body like a factory that runs different shifts. Daytime is the high production shift. Nighttime is maintenance mode. When we overload the system late in the evening with large amounts of fluid, alcohol, or salty foods, we're essentially scheduling production during the maintenance window. No wonder the alarm goes off at 3 a.m. Another piece most people overlook, and Harvard Health and the NHS often highlight this in discussions about aging and circulation, is fluid redistribution. If your ankles swell slightly during the day, gravity is storing fluid in your lower body. When you lie down, that fluid returns to circulation and passes through your kidneys. Hours later, you wake up. It feels sudden. It's not random. It's physics. And here's the twist. Many people try to solve this by barely drinking water during the day. That backfires. Concentrated urine can irritate the bladder lining, and dehydration can make your body hold on to fluid unpredictably. In the next section, we'll break down the most common hydration mistakes people make and why the solution is smarter timing, not restriction. Most people assume the solution is simple: drink less water. It sounds logical: less in, less out. But the body does not work like a basic measuring cup, and this is where many well-intentioned habits quietly make the problem worse. In a moment, I'll explain why restricting fluids during the day can actually increase nighttime trips, and later you'll see why your kidneys respond more to rhythm than to raw volume. When you underhydrate through the morning and afternoon, your urine becomes more concentrated. Resources like the Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic explain that concentrated urine can irritate the bladder lining, especially in sensitive individuals, triggering urgency signals even when the bladder isn't truly full. Think of it like strong coffee versus diluted tea. The stronger the concentration, the more stimulating it feels. Your bladder reacts the same way. Another overlooked factor, often discussed in Harvard Health and NHS patient education materials, is that when the body senses dehydration, it activates conservation mechanisms. Hormones adjust. Blood vessels constrict slightly. The kidneys become strategic about holding on to fluid, so when you finally drink a large amount later in the evening because thirst catches up with you, your system processes it in a compressed time window. That processing often spills into the night. Later, you'll see how spreading hydration earlier changes this entire equation. Alcohol is another common mistake. Many people use a glass of wine to relax before bed, not realizing that alcohol suppresses antidiuretic hormone, the hormone that normally helps your kidneys reduce urine production overnight. The NIH and PubMed literature frequently describe this mechanism in discussions about fluid balance and sleep disruption. So you're not just adding liquid, you're temporarily disabling the body's natural nighttime brake system. Caffeine, even in afternoon tea or chocolate, can stimulate the bladder as well. It's subtle, but subtle adds up. High sodium dinners are another hidden trigger. The CDC and WHO both emphasize that excess sodium increases fluid retention and thirst. When you eat a salty meal, your body pulls water into the bloodstream to dilute that sodium. That can lead to increased fluid shifts once you lie down. The result, a predictable wake-up call hours later. In a moment, I'll explain how simple leg elevation can influence this fluid shift, and later you'll see how dinner timing plays a surprisingly powerful role. There's also the myth of the small bladder. While bladder capacity can change over time, Reputable sources like Cleveland Clinic clarify that nighttime urination in many adults is more about nighttime urine production than tank size. If the kidneys are producing urine steadily, even a healthy bladder will eventually signal fullness. Blaming bladder size keeps people stuck. The real shift happens when you respect circadian biology. Your kidneys, hormones, circulation, and sleep cycles are synchronized systems. When hydration timing, salt intake, alcohol, and evening habits are misaligned, those systems compete. And when they compete, you wake up. In the next section, we'll move from mistakes to strategy and walk through how to drink water in a way that works with your biology instead of against it. Here's where the shift happens. It's not about drinking less water, it's about drinking in alignment with your body's clock. In a moment, I'll explain why your kidneys are more efficient earlier in the day, and later you'll see how a simple 2-hour buffer before bed can influence what happens at 3 a.m. Your body runs on circadian rhythms, internal timing systems that regulate hormones, blood pressure, digestion, and fluid balance. The NIH and PubMed literature consistently describe how kidney function follows these rhythms, with urine production naturally higher during waking hours and lower at night when antidiuretic hormone rises. When we front-load hydration, meaning we drink more consistently in the morning and early afternoon, we work with that rhythm instead of fighting it. Think of your kidneys like a daytime workforce operating at full capacity when you're upright, moving and exposed to light. That's when filtration is smooth and predictable. But if most of your fluid intake happens in the evening, you're essentially asking the night shift to handle daytime traffic. The result is overflow. Harvard Health and the Cleveland Clinic both emphasize that structured hydration during the day supports stable fluid balance and reduces abrupt nighttime production spikes. Another layer involves posture and circulation. When you're upright, gravity distributes fluid downward, and your cardiovascular system adapts accordingly. As described by the NHS in discussions about edema and circulation, when you lie down, fluid from the lower extremities returns to central circulation. If that shift coincides with recent fluid intake, your kidneys receive a surge. Hours later, you wake up. In a moment, I'll explain how adjusting evening positioning can help your body process that fluid earlier, and later, you'll see why consistency matters more than perfection. A practical rhythm looks like this: steady hydration after waking, continued intake through midday, gradual reduction late afternoon, and a calm taper in the evening. Not abrupt restriction, not dehydration, just a gentle slope downward. Mayo Clinic educational materials often highlight the importance of spacing fluids rather than consuming large volumes at once. When you chug water at night, your bloodstream experiences a rapid dilution effect, and your kidneys respond accordingly. Smaller, earlier intake allows gradual absorption into cells instead of rapid filtration into the bladder. It's the difference between watering a garden slowly versus dumping a bucket all at once. Your tissues absorb more when the flow is steady. There's also a sleep component. According to the CDC, consistent sleep timing strengthens circadian signaling. When your bedtime varies widely, hormone release, including antidiuretic hormone, can become less predictable. Later, you'll see how a stable pre-sleep routine amplifies the hydration strategy. The goal isn't rigid rules, it's biological cooperation. Your body prefers rhythm over randomness. When hydration, movement, meals, and sleep follow a predictable arc, nighttime disruptions often decrease, not because you forced the system, but because you respected it. In the next section, we'll build on this foundation and explore how evening habits, leg positioning, and dinner patterns quietly determine whether your bladder wakes you up or lets you sleep through the night. Now let's talk about the evening window, because what you do in the last 3 hours before bed often determines whether you sleep deeply or wake up frustrated. In a moment, I'll explain why leg elevation can change nighttime urine production, and later you'll see how dinner composition quietly influences your bladder. During the day, gravity pulls fluid into your lower legs and feet. Even mild swelling, sometimes so subtle you barely notice it, means fluid is temporarily stored in your tissues. The NHS and Cleveland Clinic both describe this process when explaining peripheral edema and circulation. When you lie flat at night, that stored fluid returns to your bloodstream. Your kidneys filter it. Urine production rises, you wake up. It feels sudden, but physiologically, it's predictable. Here's where timing becomes powerful. If you elevate your legs for a period in the early evening while reading or watching television, you encourage that fluid to re-enter circulation before you go to sleep. Your kidneys then process it while you're still awake. Later, when you lie down for the night, there's simply less fluid left to mobilize. This isn't a trick. It's basic fluid dynamics, supported by how circulation works. PubMed discussions on fluid redistribution in older adults explain this mechanism clearly. Small positioning shifts, noticeable impact. Now let's connect this to dinner. Many people unintentionally sabotage their nights with heavy, salty, or high-sugar evening meals. The CDC and WHO consistently emphasize that high sodium intake increases fluid retention and stimulates thirst. When sodium rises in the bloodstream, your body holds onto water to dilute it. That retained fluid has to be processed eventually. Often that processing happens overnight. Large carbohydrate-heavy meals can also influence insulin levels, which affect kidney sodium handling and fluid balance, as noted in metabolic research indexed in PubMed. In a moment, I'll explain why stabilizing blood sugar supports calmer nights, and later you'll see why late-night snacking adds another layer to the cycle. Alcohol deserves special mention. While it may make you feel relaxed initially, resources like the Mayo Clinic and NIH explain that alcohol suppresses antidiuretic hormone. Without that hormonal break, urine production increases. Combine that with fluid redistribution and sodium retention, and the 3 a.m. wake-up becomes more likely. Caffeine, even in afternoon coffee or evening chocolate, can stimulate bladder activity as well, something Harvard Health often discusses in patient education. The common mistake people make is focusing only on water volume while ignoring these surrounding factors. But your bladder doesn't operate in isolation. It responds to circulation, hormones, salt balance, and nervous system tone. Stress also plays a role. Elevated evening stress hormones can disrupt sleep architecture, and lighter sleep makes you more aware of bladder signals, a relationship discussed in NIH sleep research. So a calm wind-down routine matters. Dim lights, predictable bedtime, gentle movement earlier in the day. These patterns reinforce circadian rhythm, which supports nighttime hormone regulation. In the next section, we'll bring everything together and show how combining hydration timing, circulation management, and evening nutrition creates a stable internal environment that protects your sleep. There's one more layer that quietly determines whether you sleep through the night or wake up staring at the ceiling, and it has less to do with your bladder and more to do with your nervous system and daily patterns. In a moment, I'll explain why stress hormones can amplify nighttime awareness of bladder signals, and later you'll see how movement during the day acts like a reset button for fluid balance. Your bladder sends signals to your brain all the time, but whether those signals wake you up depends partly on sleep depth. The CDC and NIH both explain that deep sleep stages are when the brain is least responsive to minor internal stimuli. If your sleep is fragmented or shallow, even small amounts of urine in the bladder can trigger awakening. Chronic stress raises cortisol and adrenaline, which can disrupt sleep architecture. Harvard Health frequently discusses how elevated evening stress hormones make sleep lighter and more reactive. So the issue isn't always urine volume alone. Sometimes it's sleep sensitivity. That's why a consistent wind-down routine matters. Lower light exposure at night supports melatonin production, and as noted in NIH circadian research, melatonin works in coordination with other hormones that influence kidney function. When your sleep rhythm is stable, nighttime hormone signaling is more predictable. Now let's talk about movement. During the day, regular walking or light activity improves circulation and reduces fluid pooling in the lower extremities. The NHS and Cleveland Clinic both emphasize that physical activity supports venous return, meaning blood and fluid travel back toward the heart more efficiently. When you sit for long periods, fluid lingers in your legs. Later, when you lie down, that stored fluid shifts centrally and increases urine production. In a moment, I'll explain how even simple afternoon walks can reduce this effect, and later you'll see why long sedentary evenings often lead to restless nights. Another overlooked factor is blood sugar stability. Large spikes and crashes in glucose levels can influence kidney filtration and nighttime urination. PubMed literature on diabetes and nocturia shows a clear relationship between glucose control and increased urine production, but even in people without diabetes, unstable evening blood sugar may increase nighttime awakenings. A balanced dinner with protein, fiber-rich vegetables, and moderate portions supports metabolic steadiness. The common mistake is late-night snacking on refined carbohydrates or sugary desserts. That pattern can lead to increased thirst and fluid shifts later. Hydration timing also interacts with stress. If you sip fluids continuously right up to bedtime because you feel restless or anxious, you may unintentionally overload your nighttime filtration window. Instead, earlier structured hydration combined with calming evening rituals, gentle stretching, reading, breathing exercises, signals safety to your nervous system. When your brain feels safe, it allows deeper sleep. And when sleep is deeper, your bladder has a higher threshold before waking you. This is the synergy most people miss. It's not one habit. It's the alignment of hydration, circulation, stress regulation, meal timing, and movement. In the final section, we'll bring all these systems together into a clear daily rhythm that supports your body's natural nighttime quiet mode.